guys, it's Cam here. Welcome back to the build room. In this week's episode, we're continuing our Roadkill rescue series, wrenching on our RA28 Celica Fastback. And if all goes well, we're going to take it on its maiden voyage. So stick around and check it out. Okay, so as I said, we are continuing down the Roadkill rescue path in this week's episode, and we are hopefully going to end up with an RA28, which is something along the lines of back to its former glory. Now, the engine for this project is an 18RC inline 4, and it's pretty much proven that Toyotas are unbreakable when we got it started up in the last episode with a minimum of fuss. We did cheat a little bit, however, because we were using Aerostart to start it. We weren't using actual fuel running through the carburetor. So we've got all that mess to deal with today. And if we're gonna get it driving, we're also gonna need a whole host of other supporting services like a gearbox, a clutch, a tail shaft, a diff, and the list goes on and on. I also wanna see what the overall health of that engine is like. So we're gonna hook it up to a heart monitor and see what comes back. We've also got a chance to win another merch pack in this week's episode, and that's to say thank you guys for supporting the channel and also to launch the JDM Legends merch line, including the limited edition JDM Leno shirt. You'll need to hang around to the end of the video and I'll tell you guys what you need to do to enter that. But in the meantime, I don't want to waste a lot of today on jibber jabber, so let's get out there and pick up where we left off last week. Okay, so as I said, last week we left off having started the car using Aerostart. If you haven't watched that episode, you should stop here and go watch it first. I'll link it up in the top right hand corner. So our next trick, I want to see if this carby is actually going to work, which I highly doubt it, but we'll see. Never know. We've got to get some fuel into it though. So I pulled these out of the boot before, and yeah, I think, I'd say that's the other part to that. So these need to be cleaned up a bit. I'll just clean them up and then I'm going to bolt them on. Then I can put some fuel hose on here and set up a jerry can with the electric fuel pump and stuff. So yeah, give me 2 seconds. All right, so back from the parts store. I managed to find a bunch of my hoses and that, which is good. But here we have the standard fitting into the fuel filter all the way out to a fuel pump. And that's picking up some fresh fuel that I've got. Some 98 octane, that's 93 for the US people playing. And that fuel pump is controlled by a switch here. So if this all works, and I switch this on, we should see fuel coming into that filter. There we go, and looks like we've got fuel in the float bowl. Oh, looks like the float bowl's full, so that will be interesting. See what happens. I've also hooked up some vacuum lines so that we make sure that we have some vacuum advance, not that we'll need that to idle, but mainly so we don't have air leaks. And this, which is our brake booster line, is still going well with that zip tie repair. So yeah, we've definitely got fuel in the bowl. So let's crank this over and see if it'll fire up and idle. You might also notice I bridged the ballast resistor here just to make sure it's running at 100%. Fire in the hole. Put some more fuel in with the carby's accelerator pump. It looks like we actually have a viable engine. I'm absolutely stoked. So the next thing that I want to do is, just to make 100% sure, I'm going to pull all 4 plugs and I'm going to do a compression test to see what it runs at. It'll be a cold compression test, so it's not a perfect way to do it, but I don't want to run this long enough to heat it right up because it doesn't have a radiator on it. So yeah, let's whip the plugs out. I'll probably swap them out for new plugs at the same time just because it's easy to do. And then we'll fire it up again and see how well it idles. All right, so when you're doing a compression test, you have to have all 4 plugs out at the same time. So we'll just remember the firing order. This is plug 1, and the firing order on these is 1, 3, 4, 2. So we'll be okay there. Worst case scenario, if I forget, I can come back to the video. So we'll get all of these out for now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now you can see we've got all 4 ports open. And what we're going to do is one at a time. We use a compression tester. This is the gauge that I've got here. It just screws in to the spark plug hole with that fitting. And as we turn the engine over on the starter motor, it's going to measure the amount of compression that comes through. Now, as I said, this engine is cold, so this won't be the most accurate one, but the main thing is consistency between the cylinders. We want a base level of at least 140. Anything over 140, I'm calling it a win for this motor because it is just a bit of a hack. And we'll just do one cylinder at a time and we'll check to see that they're within 10 PSI of each other ideally. Worst case scenario, this is a bit of an agricultural tractor motor. So as long as it has compression and is sucking in fuel, it's good enough for me because roadkill. And the tester itself has an O-ring on it, so they only have to be done up finger tight. All right. And then in order to get the right reading here, we have to have the throttle open. So what I'm going to do is just open up the throttle and then grab a zip tie. So this can be this week's zip tie moment. And I'm just going to do it around the choke at this point. Doesn't have to be anything special. All right. And that's like 90%, but close enough. And I'm just going to rest that there so you guys can see it easy. Hopefully it stays there while I crank the car over. But we'll zoom right in and then fire it up. Now what we're looking to do is that needle will move up and it'll naturally just plateau somewhere. We don't need to crank this for 30 or 40 cranks. You're not going to get that much more out of it. So it's normally like you'll see the needle bounce maybe 4 or 5 times and that'll be our reading. Wow, okay, that's very good. All right, so that is 175, nearly 180. So now on to cylinder 2. All right, so that's reading just a smidge under 170, like probably like 168 maybe, something like that, but pretty good. Let that off and do cylinder 3. That one there's 165. All right, and that one there is, yeah, 165, 160, 165. So realistically, from 175 to 165, that's 10 across all 4. I'm super happy with that. That is way higher than I expected. So that means we're in a pretty safe position on the engine. So I'm just going to throw 4 NGK BP5E wires in there and then we'll fire up again. All right, then we'll just snip our cable tie so we don't try and start this at full throttle. All right, it looks like in that commotion, I've just found a spring on the ground and that spring I think goes to the carby here. So yeah, there should be this spring over the top and then probably a washer and a split pin by the looks of things. So I'll have a look for the washer and have a look for the split pin and yeah, hopefully it didn't go down there. I found the spring and the washer for this, but I couldn't find the split pin. So accelerator pump onto it. Get the washer down on top. This is difficult with gloves. Why am I trying to do this with gloves on? Anyway. And then for now, I'm just going to pop a safety pin through it. There we go, safe as houses. All right, fuel pump on. Now I'm just going to see if this will idle, and then if I've got any sort of throttle. I'm hoping that accelerator pump is going to allow this to rev, because obviously I'm going to need it to rev cleanly if I'm going to be able to move it around. It's not ideal. We do have a choke on this as well, which I'm not sure what setting that's in. This is the choke here. Oh, and the choke's about to fall apart. The nut's vibrating loose off the back of that. I'm going to tighten that up. Of course, it's a 15. All right. So that should be choked. That's fully choked. It's a bit warm of a day. I don't think it needs that. We'll go back to maybe a quarter. Give it a go. I mean, that's pretty good. All things considered. A bit more fuel. Maybe we're past that choke point. All right, so that's running pretty well. It's not idling as it should, but like I'm not really sure whether I've blocked off the right amount of vacuum lines and things like that. I'll have to have a look on Violet Crumbles to compare some of them. But the engine's definitely viable. The only thing that could be the problem here is sort of the carby or some other tuning. I mean, I haven't checked the timing. I haven't checked the dwell on the points or anything like that. So at the moment, it's running pretty darn good for something that I don't know how long it's been sitting like this, but it's in pretty horrible condition overall. So the thing that I need to do now, the next step, is to see if this thing will move under its own steam, i.e. will the clutch engage? The clutch is still there. I'm not even sure if there's fluid in it, but it is all hooked up. And there's a pedal inside, so they're all good things. So first thing I'll do is just check to see if there's fluid in it, and then we'll see if the pedal seems to function as it should. And if that works, I'm then gonna check the handbrake, because there's definitely no brakes on this. There's no master cylinder, there's no vacuum line for the booster. Not that you'd need it boosted to have brakes technically, but yeah, there's definitely no braking system other than potentially the handbrake. So if I'm gonna try and move this up the driveway, I wanna make sure that if I start bringing it back down, I can stop it before I bash into crumbles. Then we're gonna have to modify our fuel system so that this thing can actually move back and forwards. Oh, still got fluid in it. Magic. All right, won't be needing that for now. At least this means that it's not all leaked out. So yeah, let's try the pedal. Oh, well, it seems to be working. Yeah, it was a bit stiff to start with. I would imagine the seals inside the clutch master and the clutch slave are a bit iffy. Oh, but I'd say that's good enough to get us up and down the driveway at least once. We're also going to need a seat, and we've got to fix that hole in the floor. What hole? All right, so fuel tank. This is the porous spout and the blanking plate that stops fuel coming out. So what we're going to do is take the top of that, drill a pilot hole, drill a bigger hole, put a brass fitting in there, thread a brass fitting into the top, tighten this off, and then we pop another barb on the bottom. Then what I'm going to do is put the funnel over the hose clamp on, pop the internal barb on. All right, so we slide that up, trim this hose, slide that in, pop the top back on. I'm gonna pop a line on top. So it's nice and secure. And then this is our mobile fuel system. We've got a vent at the back, so we can undo that one. We're going to be pumping from it. This is all sealed. We'll plug this bit up when we store it. And other than that, self-contained fuel tank. And it can go on the floor of the cabin, and the hose can get just routed through. Pop the fuel line on. Bodgily mounted in the engine bay. That'll do. So now I want to move the ignition back into the interior. Back it goes. And as for the handbrake, all right, that's car's moving and stopping. So we've got a working handbrake. We just might be onto something here. This inspires me with confidence. Let's see what she can do. Please hold. Steer my keys. Forgot to turn the fuel pump on. Stupid. All right. So we officially have at least first gear and reverse. I think that's good enough. There's definitely a knack to that. All right, I am absolutely stoked. That was an awesome first drive and I did not think this thing was capable of it. But we have forward and reverse gears, we have a working handbrake, we have an engine that runs. It actually runs pretty well. The idle needs some work, but that's about it. So it's on to the next phase, which means it is now time to pull the engine. Okay, so yeah, that motor is coming out. While I'm absolutely stoked that it's got great compression and we managed to get it running and driving, even if that drive was a little short, considering the legislation in WA around driving unregistered vehicles means that will never be hitting the road in that current state. So yeah, even with that stellar result, that engine has just got to come out. And so we're gonna run through that in next week's episode, and then we'll talk about what's to come. Now in last week's episode, I asked you what would be a good name for that car. And man, there were some really good entries from you all. I was definitely chuckling as I went through the feed. But there was a standout that really seemed to center around what the car is today. And that was, hang on, let's get a drum roll here. The Celica. So considering we're taking the motor out, that thing is even more aptly named now. I officially christen it the Celica. So moving on to the giveaway now, you guys know that this comp is about saying thanks for all the support you've shown me over the last year and a bit, and also as a marking point for the launch of our new JDM Legends merch line. So we put 10 new designs into the store a couple of weeks ago, and they all center around those JDM icons. And they're also backed up with a limited edition JDM Leno tee. And as I said, that's a hat tip to Jay Leno and Adam LZ, who really inspired me to start this channel. Now, in order to win this week's merch pack, the game is the same, it's just the question that's different, and the fact that this is your last chance to win. All of these will be drawn in the Christmas episode, which is, of course, next Saturday. And the question is, now that you know that that thing's not going to have the 18RC in it long term, it's basically a blank canvas. We can do whatever we want with it. So I want to know what you guys would do with it. Are we turning it into a full restoration? Is it going through a resto mod? Are we making a race car, a drift car, a lawn ornament, or even a teeny tiny cube of rusty metal? So tell me what your great idea is in a comment below, and you never know, maybe that's the path we'll actually go with it. And one little bit of housekeeping on the entries. When you comment below, you have to actually answer the question. I love the fact that you guys comment and engage and ask questions and things like that, but in terms of the draw itself, you've got to answer the question. You can say whatever else you want in that comment as well, but just make sure you answer the question, because when I do draw these out, I will be checking to make sure that the person has done what they needed to do. Also, once you've won one pack, you're not eligible for any of the future draws. I'm going to choose these at random, but I don't want one person being randomly selected for all 3 episodes, because it's Christmas and we should be sharing the love. Now, while we're in that spirit of giving, the account that actually suggested the name Celica was named Peter Bug. Now, Peter, if you're watching, shoot me an email at thebuildroom@outlook.com and I will work out a way to get a merch pack out to you to say thanks. Now that's separate to the 3 we're giving away next week, so if you did comment on last week's episode, don't worry, you're still in the running. So with that wrapping up the giveaway stuff, I'll just remind you guys, if you're looking to see more in-depth first gen Celica content, I'm going to link to the full Violet Crumble series up here, and I'll also either link to the next episode in this series down here or the A90 Supra. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on the Build Room. Bye for now.